Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's XR Network Plus seminar. My name's John Rose Adams. I'm a creative producer working at XR Stories at the University of York and supporting the XR Network Plus project. Today, we've got two amazing R&D projects funded by XR Network Plus that are pushing boundaries around digital avatars and performance and character design using digital technologies. So first, we're going to be exploring a project called Shapeshifter, which is an ongoing exploration of towards a mixed reality experience, where we have live actors perform as 3D animated characters in a virtual environment for audiences in various forms. The team behind this project, which today they're all here, which is amazing. So we have David Gotchfeld, Ruth Mariner, Maggie Bain, and Freya Sewell. And they're going to introduce the project and discuss some of the design challenges of creating expressive, real-time, motion captured characters for non-human avatars. And then we're going to learn about an R&D project that focuses on real-time character performances in video game contexts. So we're welcoming Andy Bossum from the University of the Creative Arts and Asa Burrows from SKC Game Studio, and they're going to share how their work infuses AI into real-time interactions for both the player-controlled and NPC characters in video games. And they'll introduce a video game that's the game studio developing as well. So in terms of format, we've got about until 3:15. So we're going to ask the Shapeshifters team to talk about their project for about 20-25 minutes. Then there'll be time for questions, comments, and observations before the second project will do a similar talk of 20-25 minutes with more questions after that as well. And I just want to say we really, and the project teams and I, really love the questions and the thoughts and the discussion and the ideas that are provoked by it. So please do take the opportunity to share your thoughts, ask questions and all of that. You can do that in two ways. So there's a Q&A box you should be able to see somewhere on your Zoom screen, and you can type in a question there at any time through the talks, and we'll pick them up and work through them when we get to the talking bit. Or when we get to the discussion bit, you can raise your hand. You should see a button somewhere on your screen that does that, and you can ask your question or say your comment in using your voice. So both options are available to you. I think I'm going to try and click my screen. I've got one quick message about what XR Network Plus is, in case you don't already know. So full name, XR Network Plus Virtual Production in a Digital Economy. It's an EPSRC, so an Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council funded project, and the core partners are the University of York, Cardiff University, University of Edinburgh, University of the Arts London, and Ulster University. And its broad aim is to help shape a 10-year research agenda for virtual production technologies. Okay, that is enough from me. And I'm going to hand over now to the Shapeshifters team to do their talk.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen, and then Ruth will kick us off.
Great. So thanks, everyone. So we're going to be talking about Shapeshifter, which is an immersive experience exploring the true diversity of nature through the story of the shapeshifting nature spirit, Puka, who you can see here as the white character in the middle of the screen. So Shapeshifter is a location-based mixed reality experience with a live actor guides an audience through the hidden parts of nature to explore our notions of gender and identity. And our team is me. Maggie Bain, who's the creative director and actor. Do you want to say hi, Maggie?
Hello, hi there. I'm an actor, voice actor and movement director, and for want of a better word right now, an immersive XR practitioner with about 20 years of experience in physicality and collaborative storytelling, cross-stage, screen, video games, and now the immersive arts.
Nice. Yep, so I'm Ruth Mariner, so I'm the co-creative director and I'm the narrative designer. So my background's also as a writer and director within theatre and opera, but now kind of mainly focusing on immersive. So that's a storytelling for immersive technology, immersive theatre, and also video games. And we have Lucy Wheeler, who's not here today, but she's our developer. And Toki Allison, who is also not here, but she's our producer. Both of them are working within XR as well as other adjacent fields. And we have David Goshfeld. David?
Yes, so I'm a creator, an XR creator and a theatrical creator and a researcher. I am a research fellow. I'm the Performance Lab fellow at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, and I'm the technical director on this project. And
Yeah,
on to
nice.
Freya, our art director.
Hi, yeah, I am Freya Saul. I am art directing and doing the 3D modeling of the avatar and of the worlds as we're going forward. I am particularly passionate about bringing nature into the tech space and about them becoming better friends. And yeah, I'm super happy to share the project with you guys today.
So here's a trailer. Ruth, do you want to introduce this, or should we just play it?
Yeah, so this is a trailer we made from our second residency at XR Stories. It's more of a kind of overview of the work we did than a polished trailer, but it does kind of show you the experience.
I'm Maggie Bain, and this is Shapeshifter, an interactive experience which explores the parts of the natural world that we can't normally see. Using a motion capture actor within a digital environment, it's designed to encourage storytelling and play.
What? Are you like me? Shapeshifter?
Shapeshifter enables the audience to engage with nature, to get inside it in a way that isn't possible in reality. And they connect through my character, the nature sprite Puka. I'm Maggie Bain.
Great, cool. So just the nuts and bolts really of the experience. It is a location-based mixed reality experience where a live actor guides you around the space. The actor performs as a 3D animated character within a virtual environment, and the audience wear headsets, all sharing the same physical and virtual space. And it combines elements of free play and audience independent exploration, but guided by the actor, and there is a linear storyline threading through the experience. So now I think we're going to just go on to explore a bit about the character of Puka themselves.
Do you want to?
No, we're sorry, we're going to just talk about the journey so far. Sorry, that's my fault. So we have actually done quite a few residencies with Shapeshifter. We started off at XR Stories when we were basically exploring acting technique for emotional expression, trying to use our expertise from theatre to maximize the amount of expression that you can get in mocap. And part of what we discovered really was that you can use some kind of qualities around animation or borrowed from animation to help make the avatar more expressive. And we're going to explain a little bit more about those in a minute because they've been integrated into the project now. Yeah, and we had another residency where we kind of came up with the concept of what we're investigating. We then went to Central School of Speech and Drama, but that was funded by XR Stories, to explore non-human embodiment and avatar transformation. So basically, how does Maggie, a human person with 2 arms and 2 legs, embody something that might have 3 arms and 2 legs or 4 arms? So that was our question there. And then the last residency was at Nottingham University, working out how we network the headsets together to support multiple people in the same virtual environment. And then recently we got story funding or early development funding from the BFI to kind of explore what the story could be, and mainly, to be honest, make a really nice deck, which this isn't the really nice deck, actually. This is just a PowerPoint presentation, but yeah, it gave us that thinking time to kind of put things together and make it look compelling, basically. So we're going to just talk a bit more about Puka. So it comes from Celtic folklore, really, the character of a Puka. It was the basis for Shakespeare's Puck. And really there's two types of pukas. One's a bit more of a domestic kind of brownie type creature. That's what you see in Midsummer Night's Dream. But then there's this other kind of wilder Welsh or Irish puka that occupies more liminal spaces, as drunk villagers were going home at night, would kind of whisk them off into the wild to have a transformative journey and come back kind of a bit discombobulated, but also psychologically transformed. So the puka is really the kind of bridge between human and animal or natural worlds, and also between the conscious and kind of subconscious and wild parts of ourselves. Yeah, and really, I guess our impetus is that's what we want to do for our audience, is to take them off a wild journey into the heart of nature. But we're not necessarily doing it in the traditional way. We may end up using forms like a hare or a dog that the puka normally appeared as, but we're also exploring like the parts of nature that we can't see, the secret parts. And a lot of these forms that we are going to be exploring highlight the gender and sexual diversity of nature, which is also linked to the fact that the puka is a non-binary nature spirit, and we're tying that in with Maggie's experience as a non-binary actor. So that's how these kind of elements of the concept are baked together.
So for the work we did for this XR Network Plus grant, which was done at the Central School of Speech and Drama back in January, was looking at this question of how the actor performs this non-human avatar. And the key here is that obviously traditional animation has made it possible for these non-human characters and for morphing characters in real, through the story. The trick for us is how to do it live, how to do it in real time, where we're taking the performance capture directly into the game engine and then streaming it out to the VR headsets that the audience is wearing without any post-processing. So the question is, how do we do this in a way that works smoothly for the actor and works smoothly for the audience, both in terms of the performance of any of the individual forms, but also for the transformation in real time. So just to show you where we ended up with this grant was, here's some video of how the character was moving and how it transforms. And there's no audio in here, so but as you can see, we've got multiple arms and the facial expressions, and then the real-time transformation between this humanoid and multi-armed character. And now Freya is going to talk a bit about the design process. If I can
Thank you very much, David.
Slide to advance. Oop. Sorry, there we go.
Right, so this avatar design was a combination of two really important factors, of the puka character and of Maggie as a non-binary actor. And the initial process was a sort of iterative drawing process back and forth between myself and the team and myself and Maggie to find a form. And the inspiration was a sort of a few things coming together when it came to the Celtic side of things. Ancient masks, and particularly how a mask is easy to transmit emotions, is often used in theatre or in ancient practices to have something that's far away be kind of easy to understand. So in the space of the virtual reality, where things can sometimes be low resolution, or you're watching something from far away, to have a face with a really clear, recognizable emotions. That's why we went down the mask sort of route, and that also combines well with a shape-shifting creature. And then Celtic linear graphics, and also the hairy nature of puka, often in myths, we were kind of thinking about, and how it has horns. So we kind of took these things, next slide please, into trying to sort of extend them and think, how can these horns, how can this hair be seen as part of the shapeshifting and as an extension of the emotional capabilities of the avatar? How can we kind of use these to achieve something that could not be achieved without the virtual space and without the virtual character? So the hair and the horns kind of became what we now call emotion horns. Next slide, please. And we considered a couple of different ways to do it, but in the end we sort of hijacked the AR blend shapes, which are used to record someone's face and the movement for emotions, and we attached certain horns structures to certain facial features. So when you smile, the horns kind of curve in a more friendly way. If you frown, your eyebrows go down, they kind of become pointy, as an experimentation to extend Maggie's emotional capabilities. Next slide, please. And yeah, I think this is a good video for seeing those emotion horns kind of in action. So that was sort of the first step before the body was transforming. This was really early on in the project. We were just thinking, how can we really quickly extend and bring shape-shifting abilities to this character, kind of using what's already there. And so, yeah, you can see these horns, and they're going all the time that they're talking, they're moving around in different ways, and they kind of combine in different layers. And you can see hopefully here how the mask is hopefully transmitting emotions fairly clearly, even when the world itself is complicated and there's lots of different things going on. Yeah.
And just to jump in, the really, I think, clever thing about hooking this up to the AR kit blend shapes is that we didn't have to do extra work. So Freya had to model all of these shapes, of course, but the pipeline, the real-time pipeline for facial capture using LiveLink Face into the game engine and onto this avatar is basically already present, and we essentially just used what was already available to us.
Exactly. We were able to sort of hijack and kind of take advantage of it without having to do a lot of extra background setup. And it did work fairly smoothly, because one of those rare times when actually I remember it going it kind of worked out the box as we wanted it to. But then, yes, for this project, we were moving on to extending that shape-shifting from just the head into the whole body, and how can an actor change their shape, and really critically was considering that level of control. Like, is there a way for the actor to be the one who is deciding when they shapeshift and how much they shapeshift? And that's an ongoing kind of challenge throughout the project. But yeah, as you can see, I think maybe next slide. I'm not.
The next slide is the video.
Okay, I want to get to that slide. Okay, yeah, all right. Well, let's watch the video then.
Okay. So this was showing how the arms were, we looked at different ways of controlling the arms, because I think that was the real, one of the main research questions was, if you've got these extra limbs, how does the actor perform with them? And how are they actually controlled sort of technically? So what this slide is illustrating is just having them move synchronously. But Frey, did you want to talk about the tardigrade inspiration first, or?
Yeah. So we, in our research, we were looking at the evolution of gender. Where did these ideas of gender come from? And looking at it through different points in our biological history. And one of the spaces that was very interesting was this like microbial space, which is where the first type of gender, which was much more than two, that's for sure, kind of was emerging. So it was sort of leading us into this like prehistorical space. And then also the selection was very much driven by the desire to create make life really difficult for ourselves. We thought, what would be bloody impossible to do? Something with 8 arms, something with 8 limbs, and that was a reason to like throw ourselves in the sort of to give ourselves a really good challenge. If we can get a tardigrade to be a human and a human to be a tardigrade, then maybe we can achieve kind of whatever it is that we want to do. So that was where the inspiration for the tardigrade came from.
Right. And sorry, so we sort of just went out of order, but basically that then raises this question of, well, how do you control these multiple arms? So as I was saying here, the first thing we tried was, well, just having them all animated synchronously with the actor's arms. So the top arms are controlled directly by the actor, and the other arms are essentially taking the exact same motion capture data. And then we looked at other ways of doing this because we felt that looked artificial. It looked rigged. It looked like the arms were essentially all tied together. So we tried basically giving the secondary arms additional animations of their own so that they had a little bit of their own behavior. And what this slide shows is we played with what the weighting is, like how much of their behavior should come from these pre-recorded animations versus from the actor's own movements, the actor's live movements. And this is interesting because the arms are moving with the actor, but also have a little bit of a life of their own. And then where we ended up is this, where we actually introduced a very slight delay. So the arms are taking all of their movement directly from the actor's movement. But with a very slight delay between them. And while it is not entirely, the arms don't have an additional sort of expressive capability beyond what the actor is doing with their arms, it still looks more organic in that they're not just immediately following along, they have this slight delay. So this is something that we are going to continue to experiment with as we go along, but we thought this is interesting to try these different ways of giving the actor control over these arms. So I'm having trouble moving to the next slide. But the other challenge, and in a way the bigger challenge, was this question of the shape-shifting itself. Like, how does the avatar morph from between the humanoid form and what we're calling the tardigrade form? And again, as I said earlier on, in traditional animation, morphing is fairly easy. You change the mesh, you record your keyframes, but how do we do this live in a way that is smooth and organic? And the first thing we tried was having 2 separate avatars. So one is a humanoid form with the extra blend shapes to have the arms essentially protrude out. And then once they were fully extended, we swapped to an avatar which was rigged. This is showing the skeleton with the extra rigging for the tardigrade arms. The problem with this is in the intermediate stages of the morph, the arms are dead. So if the actor is moving their arms, but these other arms are simply just protruding out without animation, it looks kind of odd. So we then realized that in fact, we didn't need to swap because the rigging can always be present even if the mesh isn't fully extended. And so this is sort of showing how that worked. So we basically kept the skeleton and then just allowed the avatar to morph essentially around the skeleton. And as you can see, this is what the mesh actually is doing when you do that morphing. And in this case, you can see what's highlighted in red is the part of the mesh that's controlled by the forearm of this extra arm. So it's a little bit of a trick, and I think anyone who's done a lot of skeletal animation is, of course, familiar with that the bones don't have to be inside the mesh the whole time. And so we took advantage of that in order to make this morphing possible. Sorry, I'm just checking my notes on what this next video is. Oh yeah, so this is an example. What this means is that the arms can be animated in this halfway state, and it's a little subtle here when they're smaller, but as you can see, the actor is moving, and the extra arms, even though they're not fully extended, are moving along with the actor's arms. And that allows us allows the character to be neither here nor there, sort of in these intermediate states, and still be performing. And talking about performing, Maggie, talk to us about performing with this character.
So the opportunities of these digital spaces and digital avatars is really exciting for us as performers, in terms of, even just as simply as the notion that we all went to drama school, those of us that trained through drama school, or we come to this industry in order to tell lots of different stories. And a lot of us come to it, as I did, to be other than ourselves. And the industry as it stands doesn't often let us do that. We're very often typecast. But the idea of being able to create these non-human avatars completely blows open that casting bracket, which is really exciting. And we get to bring all our skills to bear on these storytelling methods. The thing about these characters, though, is that given how fantastical and non-human they are, it also then takes up an awful lot of our brain space as performers in order to make them work. We as performers, we can only really do one thing well at any one time. And that doesn't mean to say we can't do a lot of things at work at once. What we have to do is put each thing in to the muscle memory and practice that to a point where we can then forget about it. So we're finding all of these fantastic things. So what it's teaching us about what's going to be required from performance aspects, I'm speeding through this because I'm just aware of time, is that all of the lessons that we have from the stage and screen work that we do apply very particularly to this particular medium, but that there is also more time, I think, that we have to build into this for performers in order to layer up this muscle memory and to make these things happen. It's very difficult to have an eye on all the technical things that you're trying to do, and the storytelling, and that live relationship with an audience that is sharing space physically with you all at the same time. And this is a medium which is constantly asking us as performers, because I don't think it really has an understanding of how we do what we do. I think a lot of people within this industry understand what we do and have quite rightly identified us to put in front, be the front face of all of the things that we're creating in this medium. But often the processes as we understand them are not quite given the time that we need to do them as we know how to do them on stage and screen, but they require even more time within this discipline. And we are now looking at how to champion that within the way that we now structure and fund this project. That is a very general way of saying lots of specific things, but perhaps I can get into more detail in the Q&A after that.
Do you want to talk about what's going on in this video?
Sure. So in this video, what we're trying to do is find ways of navigating through the space that allow me, as a physically bound to the laws of gravity performer, to explore a digital space where those rules do not apply. And it's so often the case. I was on a AAA game a little while ago where I was having to do something very, very similar, and we're employing exactly the same technologies. We've brought in some flight cases, and we're experimenting with the physicality of the actors to sort of float. What we would love from the tech is to find an ability to capture breath and weight. I think every performer that's worked within this medium will tell you these things, in order to help us root these performances in something that feels much more present in a logical way. Because if we're too illogical, and especially because we are taking our audience into naturally inspired but abstract environments, Puka needs to be the bridge between the audience experience of that environment and their understanding of how things should work and how to feel safe. And as soon as they feel that things are not real, or they're not logical in a way that they should understand, it will throw them out of the experience and make them feel a bit lost. So this is us desperately trying to bridge the gap between Puka being able to floating around space, and me, unfortunately, not having those superpowers yet.
And that's it. Thank you. I think we've gone a little over in time, but as it says on the slide, we are continuing to develop this piece. We're interested in we're talking to the science and natural history community about some of the nature that we're exploring with this. We are looking for technical partners and also looking into this question of how we present this kind of work. So really interested in talking with venue partners as well. So please feel free to get in touch, and thank you all. And also thank you again to XR Network Plus for funding this research.
Thank you so much, David, Maggie, Ruth, Freya. That was really great. And I'm so pleased, because you're such a multidisciplinary team, that you could assemble here and talk us through your respective contributions. So anybody on the in the audience, ask a question in the Q&A or put your hand up, and Dan, my colleague, will spot you and invite you up. In the meantime, I've got a question to kick things off, and it's a bit geeky, but it's about performance, and it's about those sliders that you created. So when you're doing the experimenting with the limb transformations, is there a step that you're exploring, or will come to, whereas in the same way that you were giving Maggie the control over the emotional horns, I think you called them, through the AR kit, could you also potentially give Maggie the control over other elements of the kind of the transformations with some other thing? And had you had any thoughts about how to do that? Or will it always be, you get to a point, I suppose, where it's performer and a secondary performer that's also doing some sort of show control, but with a character in real time? What's your thoughts on that?
Maggie, feel free to jump in, but I think one of the things we talked about was, could this be controlled by particular gestures that the actor does or things like that? I think it's certainly possible. There would be more, that is a whole other technical challenge, is sort of recognizing full body poses and then having those trigger things in the game engine. But I think there's also the cognitive load challenge, right, which Maggie sort of alluded to, is how many things does the actor need to be thinking about? And I think the thing with the facial horns, with the facial expression stuff, is because it's just rigged to the actor's expression, natural facial expressions, there isn't any extra thinking about that, right? We could look at, well, right now we want the horns to be more pointy because, we want this to be expressed, but Maggie could perform that as one of their own facial expressions rather than an extra thing they have to tweak or control. And we can also do tweaking in the game engine to control how sensitive those blend shapes are to the expressions that they're rigged to. But we are talking about theater where a lot of things that happen on the stage are controlled by technicians off stage. And so for us, the idea of having these sliders to control these kinds of transformations for the actor, it makes sense, right? It's part of the way that the art has always been conducted. But Maggie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, David, you've hit on a load of the points there. I think, the more technical things that I have to think about, the more barriers are put in place between my relationship, my character's relationship with the live audience that are there in front of me. And the more that we can find triggers that are emotion based, or this sense that I would hope that some of these things are more interesting when they happen to Puka. They happen because it's just an innate quality in Puka, and Puka isn't even conscious that they are always happening. And if we can find a way, either through that being triggered by tone of voice, something connected to the emotion horn triggering that's happening through my face, or some kind of, if we can train the technology to recognize the kind of gestures that I, as a performer, make when I am feeling a certain way, that allows that relationship to stay much more organic. Or we rely, as David was saying, on the way that theatre is built, and we have external stage manager, in my terminology, triggering those kind of things, because they are also part of having built the show and feeling it along with me. And I think that's the most important thing. If things are just happening because they're being triggered and they're interesting, it's never as satisfying as when they happen because it feels like it should. It tells you something, or it adds a layer to the story. They should all. The worst case scenario for me is that if the physicality is constantly copying what I'm saying and what I'm doing, we lose a level of storytelling. In the physical work that I do in stage and theatre and screen, we're always looking for how the words can do part of the storytelling, part of that lifting, and the physicality can add layers to that or tell you something else. And if everything is channeling down that one direction, I think we lose the ability to move the audiences in a fulfilling way.
And we've got a really straightforward question from Jamie in the audience. It's asking about, so for the intended show that you're developing, what's the target audience, or who's the target audience?
Ruth, Maggie, do you want to take that?
Yeah. Well, I can hand over to Maggie, but I'll just say.
Oops. Maybe we'll hand over to Maggie now because Ruth just frozen.
Yeah.
What we would hope for this kind of experience is this would be a show open to everybody. We would, I mean, obviously there are limitations given that we're putting our audience in headsets, so we're looking at an audience of sort of 14 plus. When we are channeling ourselves at that family dynamic, and that it would be an interesting experience for friendship groups to come and do together. Because of the nature of the conversation that we want to foster afterwards. What we're looking to achieve here is bringing people in to look at our relationship with nature and the aspects of what really is natural when we look at the way that we have socio-politicized lots of gender identities within the societies that we live in. And this idea that we gently invite people to look at it from a slightly different perspective based on science that allows them not to feel lectured, but to play and to experience, interrogate this idea that at some point in our evolution, we all came from a single-celled organism. That, if you think about it, one way of looking at that is that it is non-binary and that it contains everything that we need in order to reproduce. We've evolved from that point. And to then invite a creature like the puka to feel safe enough to step back into a human environment where they could be better understood than they perhaps were back in the days of ancient Celtic folklore, or and that they'll take those conversations home and talk about them in a really light, like they're deep conversations, but hopefully it'll just be gentle shifts that are being made. So I would hope that anybody would feel that they could come and participate in this experience, but we'll discover more as we continue to make it.
Amazing, brilliant, thank you. I'm going to wrap that part of the seminar now. So thank you again, David, Maggie, Freya, Ruth. That was great, brilliant, really, really interesting. If one of you is feeling up for it, there's another question from Jamie. We'll leave it open. It might be just a bit more thought, because you can type them in if one of you wants to do that while we do the next talk, or perhaps Jamie can email one of the team afterwards. But thank you very much.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
No worries, no worries. It's been great to see you. So we're going to hand over now to Andy and Asa. If you want to share your screen and get going, we're still just about on time to finish at 3:15, so you should have plenty of time to do your talk.
Brilliant. Well, I really enjoyed that. I'll just open with that statement. That looked like a great project. So you look like you've been having lots of fun. Right, yeah. Asa, can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so I'll just open with introductions. My name's Andy Bossum. I'm the Industry Engagement Lead for the School of Games and Creative Technology at the University for the Creative Arts. And with us today, we've got the co-founder and CEO of SKC Game Studio, Asa Burrows. Next slide, please. I thought I'd just start off with a bit of the background of where we came together. And we've been doing a lot of reaching out into the creative industries at UCA and trying to bridge those gaps between companies and different areas within games and XR, and where they're trying to sort of find solutions and where they don't have capability and we have. Can we do next slide? Thanks very much. And this is where we first met SKC Game Studio. And so we started building up the conversation there. We were first initially doing this sort of innovation summit within the sort of Surrey and the Southeast, but within our networks, the SKC guys came along who are based near Cambridge. And so we were really interested to start up the conversation about what they were doing with their game project and how we could sort of loop in together. And yeah, so this was a unique opportunity. As a school of games and creative technology, we're very sort of industry facing. We have a broad spectrum of different kinds of research projects going on. But at one end, we're very, very much sort of engaged with the games industry, and partly where we are based is within the Guildford Games Hub, and we're surrounded by games companies here. So this was a great opportunity to collaborate with SKC, who are leading in sort of AI-driven NPCs within games. The game that they're developing at the moment is Project UN Taradene. And this was a great opportunity, as I was saying, where we've got capability and they were looking to develop what they were doing and bringing those two parts together. We've got within the school, and in combination with one of the other schools that we were bringing on this project, which was Film, Media, and Performing Arts, we've got BA, MA, Acting and Performance. And this is a great opportunity for bringing in quite a number of students to work on this project, to gain real knowledge about the development process, what it's like to be acting and working to a different project. So working within motion capture. Most of the acting students that have been working on this have been doing sort of stage and film. So this was another interesting area to expand their experience. Just before all of this, we recently, in the last couple of years, had an Office for Students grant fund come in, and this enabled us to sort of build in quite a lot of tech capability within the School of Games and Creative Technology. And part of that is our motion capture facility, which we have it based between two different studios. Asa, next slide, please. Thanks. And so Asa, I don't know if you wanted to say something here about the auditioning process that we went through at UCA. Oh, you should switch your mic.
Apologies for that. Yeah, so I was just saying that when we got involved with the UCA and was talking to them about working with our project, one of the things that we obviously was keen to do, and UCA were keen to do, was to get the students involved in some of the acting within the game, but also in some of the AI pieces that we are doing around voice, becoming voice actors for the game as well. So we set up, I went on for a couple of weeks, audition process with all the students. So we picked students from different stages of their development through the university, and picked a wonderful team that ultimately came on board and played a part in the game. And we tried to make it open to as many of the students as we possibly could. And out of all the students we interviewed and auditioned, about 30 of them actually became AI voice actors as well for the game.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. I think one of the interesting things about this project, and as we know with our graduates going into industry, is that there's always that kind of like chicken and egg situation of whether, to get a junior role, you need experience. And so this was a great way of sort of like leveling up a lot of students who are going to gain credits on a release game. So this was quite an exciting opportunity for a lot of them. Can we go to the next slide, please, Asa? Yeah. So just a little bit of the tech background. Our two different studio sizes, we've got a 20 and 30 camera Vicon setup. We're using Vicon Shogun to sort of manage and review the captured locomotive data. Next slide, please. Oh, if we can go back one.
Nope, sorry.
That's all right. And as SKC are evolving from being, this is their first game that they're working on. At the time when we started, they didn't have an animation department. And one of the things that I run at UCA is an incubator studio. And so we do graduate IP to market, but we're also using that studio to sort of layer in also other kind of outsourcing opportunities. So we then brought in some of our alumni to work on the sort of retargeting and animation tidy up in Motion Builder and Maya. And this is kind of, how we're expanding the studio at the moment, both in incubation and across a range of other projects. Next slide, please. And also within this project, for what the actors had to do, we brought in other additional training to support them. And we had an ex-Marine come in because part of what we were doing within the game narrative is part of the sort of squad-based tactics. And we sort of then built in, the use of sort of having the right kind of props that, for those kind of engaged performances. Next slide, please. Within that, in-game animations, we also had to sort of build in sort of custom staging. And so part of what I was exploring was like looking at this Lobo system and then designing this for this sort of Hilo exfil based around the sort of NH90 troop carrier. And then, yeah, so we were sort of developing some of the cutscenes for SKC. Next slide, please. I think this has got some of the video. Can we play the video? Brilliant. Next slide, please. Cool. Within our team, we have a professor in an AI, and they had several discussions around the uses of sort of large language models and so on. Did you want to say anything about this, Asa, in terms of some of the discussions around large language models?
Yeah, sure. So we within the game and also within another product of ours, we use quite a lot of different layers of AI technology. And what we was doing here was we were exploring a couple of areas of AI. One was around how we can control domain within a specific um, um, area when you're using generative AI, and also how we can use AI to analyze situations around sound and music, and also how that could maybe be relayed back into animation.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Slide, please. Did you want to say something else about the AI voice models that you were developing while we were at UCA?
Yeah, so what we're doing within the game itself is we're creating an environment where people can engage with the character within the context of the game, and they can interact with that character in a human-like way, but also give the characters a little bit of an outside capability to talk about other things that may not be directly linked to the game, but may be of interest to the player, so they become more immersive and connected to those characters. And to do that, you have to create AI voice models to allow those characters to talk in a dynamic way. And so we use the students at UCA to record these voice models in our sort of AI voice platform. And we do it in a couple of ways. We do basic voice recording initially, which we use as part of the development process just to test the voice out and how the voice actor is able to express themselves. And if that goes quite well, then we invest the time and the money into building a much more advanced AI voice, which ultimately gets used in the game.
Brilliant. Next slide. Do you want to say a little bit about the spin out that's happened whilst developing Project UN?
I will do, yeah. So we started building Project UN back in 2019, and like most people that know how you develop big games, you tend to spend the first few years building your technology, and then once you've built your technology, the tooling as they call it, you then would build the game. So we had quite a few different AI pieces in the game that we were developing. Some of it was around generative AI, some of it was about player analytics in terms of what they're doing, and other pieces are to do with how we, control environments. Again, dictated by how the players are playing the game. And from that, one of the first things we did, which came out of the project we're working with the UCA on the motion capture side of things, was we developed this character in the game, which is an NPC security guard that people could just interact with. And this AI character has now moved on to become more of a business engagement product and extending the uses of AI characters that was designed for the games, but being used more in a business context. So we created a platform which we call 1956 Individuals. Now, in this little video I'm going to play now, is you're going to see one of it's actually one of our art team members engaging with the NPC security guard in the game, and this is actually being done specifically using the mocap sequences that we recorded at the UCA, but also the generative AI platform that we've developed for the game.
Have you ever been off-world?
No, I've never been off-world.
Oh.
I've only had the opportunity to visit the bridge when I was a kid, but that's it. It's too expensive for me to travel off-world on my current salary as a security guard.
So the game itself is an open world game. In fact, there's actually 3 open worlds in the game, and the game is set about 100 years from now. And in the game, the 3 open worlds are planet Earth, a fictional planet called Taradene, and then this huge space station that sits between the 2 of them, called the Bridge. And the idea behind the game from a creative perspective is telling the story of a couple of agents that have been brought together by the UN to investigate intergalactic crime. And what they're doing is they're unlocking a much bigger conspiracy that's going on by forces that's even beyond these 2 planets. And the idea from a visual perspective was to try to generate an Earth that wasn't sort of like a utopia or apocalyptic, which tends to be how most stories go. We actually wanted to just create a world 100 years from now that is realistic. Like, we looked at how we've developed in the last 100 years, and then we then guess, because it is just guesswork, but based on other research and ideas, is what would the world really look like in 100 years from now? And that's what Earth looks like. So there's constraints about how Earth will evolve. But on Taradene, that's completely different. It's completely open canvas, and that's a real alien world that is, just going to be mind-boggling. And then seeing in between, you've got this bridge which is encompassing the cultures of Earth and Taradene together, and so you're seeing a different mix of environments that's going on. But while all this is going on and you're following a very specific story-driven tale, what's actually happening is you're also engaging and developing as a player, as well as learning and building up relationships with the characters. And again, you're doing that with the AI character platform that we developed, which we now call 1956. The platform itself has actually been in the news because we recently did an agreement with Bletchley Park, where we will be creating the AI Alan Turing, which people will be able to go and engage with from January next year. We're also recently announced a project we're doing with Leeds Castle, where we are recreating Queen Eleanor of Castile, who was the first owner of Leeds Castle, and Leeds Castle's going through a big transformation in the way that they're going to be telling the story of the castle, very different from what they do today, but I can't really say too much more about that. And then the character platform that we built for the game, the actual characters that are built for the game, are actually now being hosted as an engagement tool within BT's Innovation Centre, talking to people in fictional zones that they create and they showcase within their Adastral Park Innovation Hub that they have, and it's been quite well welcomed, and they really enjoy the engagement with these characters in a human-like way. They have a lot of fun with them, actually, that they've now put it into their future zone in their headquarters in London.
I've got some concept for that.
Have you ever been off-world?
Sorry about that. For some reason, it would not let me move on. Go back. Right, sorry about that, Andrew. Do you want me to carry on, or would you like to sort of jump in now?
I can't remember how many more slides have we got after this.
This is
pretty much it. There's some concept there
Yeah.
of Alan Turing of what it will look like in terms of the scale in being able to interact with real-time avatars of key figures. I think this is a really impressive development. I think that's pretty much the end. We've got one more slide, just which is a thank you
Yeah.
for listening.
Yes, sure. So just coming back to the project for Alan Turing, and in terms of how these characters come from a computer game, which are very small, they're still good quality characters, but not really of high def, to now when you're looking at that picture of Alan Turing on the screen, that this is a full-size, 6-foot tall digital display where Alan Turing is being rendered very high quality in real time, that is engaging with people and talking, and it's that engagement that kind of immerse people more into the story as he talks about his life at Bletchley Park and the stuff that he did, and again the system itself is using a lot more technology than you would normally get within a computer game, because it's a tool that's engaging with not just one person, but lots of people and lots of people at the same time. So it's having to use other types of technology that sits at the back end that manages that whole process, so that people can have that one-to-one engagement. And then again, because obviously Bletchley Park is a museum, they're there to tell the story. They're there to tell the whole story. Sometimes the context of a story needs to be told differently when it's a child to when the story is being told to an adult, and so there's technology in there to be able to detect whether the system's talking to a child or talking to an adult, and able to change the content in such a way so that the way the story is told is different. All right. What we're going to do is to show you a video, which I think we got time to show it. It's literally just less than 2 minutes. It just shows you how these characters interact with people in the context. In this way, the character's been set up as being a digital receptionist.
Hi, welcome to Agile Bank. How can I help you today?
I'm here to see Simon McGuinness.
Okay, great. If I could take your name, I'll let him know you've arrived.
Okay, thank you. I'm Tony Stone.
Got it. You have a 10 a.m. meeting. I'll send him a message now to let him know you've arrived. Please take a seat, Tony. Simon will come and collect you soon.
Also, I've parked in the car park. Will that be okay?
As long as you parked in a visitor bay, you'll be fine for the day.
Thank you.
No problem. Let me know if I can help with anything else.
Will do.
Olá, estou aqui para participar do seminário de inovação. Poderia me dar instruções?
Claro! Você poderia me mostrar um documento de identidade com foto? Obrigado, Eri. O evento acontece no espaço para eventos no 3º andar. Gostaria que eu enviasse instruções para o seu dispositivo móvel?
Isso seria ótimo, obrigada.
And as you can see, the way the platform works is it actually engages with people in different languages, and it does automatically switch, which is kind of how it works. I think there's been a couple of questions that's cropped up, but one has just disappeared off the screen. But it was to do with about Alan Turing and his history, not just a basic part, but how he was persecuted, and he ultimately committed suicide. The way the story will be told for Alan Turing isn't going to hide or shy away from those subjects. Those subjects are still going to be dealt with, but we have created a content committee with Bletchley Park and other stakeholders that have an interest in determining what the facts are around those stories, so that the story is told as accurately as possible. All right.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, that's so does that
Thanks, Hazel.
There's,
That's it.
I guess,
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, are you happy to move into questions and comments now? Yeah,
Absolutely.
brilliant. Okay, so I think, Ruth, I can see you've put your hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
Oh no, I haven't got my hand up.
Maggie.
Yes,
Oh,
Maggie.
sorry, Maggie. Sorry, Maggie.
Hi, yes, I did have my hand up. Hang on, I'm just turning everything back on. What a great project. This sounds really fascinating. And part of the work that I do, I am working with Lambda to build in what the professional training for this kind of work should be. It's really exciting to see this kind of work happening in educational institutions. I'm just wondering, as a performer, I know that the conversation around AI is quite tenuous at the moment. I find it quite an exciting realm, and I look at the possibility of it, but I did wonder how that conversation was facilitated with the performers, given that they are still in training and maybe most of them are not represented yet. And also whether what they were feeding was AI specific to the single game that you're developing, or whether it's part of a wider product.
Okay, Maggie, that is an awesome question that you asked me there, and it's going to touch on one of my most favorite subjects, which is about ethical AI. So at 1956 individuals, and I would be more than happy to host you to come along and see what we do in this particular space. But the thing with AI is it's a wonderful technology to use in a creative way, but unfortunately, because of the way it's being created, it does plagiarize lots of people's content, right? The content that don't actually really belong to anybody other than the individuals themselves. And unfortunately, because these people have made this stuff available online or whatever, it's somehow been hovered up into these big AI models. So there are several companies that are advocating for ethical AI, and they have got like 6 different pillars of AI ethics, which covers things like security, personal data, transparency, accuracy, and all that sort of stuff. But what they don't really touch on is economic security. And so we created the 7th pillar, which we call economic security. So when an actor or even people providing content that comes into our models, they get continual recurring revenue every time it's used. So it's not like they're invited along and paid for the day. If that gets used in a client project, or it gets used in our system, every single time that voice is generated, they earn income from it. And that's the way AI should work. And so we kind of work, I can't tell you of everybody we're working with, but we're working with some really amazing companies and individuals in the creative space, including people that had signed petitions about AI and the use of other people's creative content. And because they're looking to work with us because they understand where we are going with AI generally and how AI can be used in a really positive way. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. That sounds amazing, and I'd love to come and speak to you more about that. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you, A. So I'm going to voice, David, I'll voice your question. So David asked around latency between the sort of the human game player, or in the business case, the visitor to the reception, and the AI character that's responding. What's the latency between question and response between the AI and
Okay,
the
so when we first started this, the latency was actually 6 seconds, which for users is an absolute eternity. And so what we did in our very first tech demos several years ago was we had filler content. So when someone asked the security guard the question, is going to say, hold on a minute, ma'am, I'm just getting the message in. And while they're getting the message in, it's processing everything. And then it's like, oh, okay, let's get back to your question. And then they answer the question. Today, it is super fast. So we've really rationalized our back-end processes, and we can actually turn a whole dialogue response around in about 900 milliseconds. So from a person's wait perspective, there is no wait really at all. It's almost instant. There is some time lag around certain technologies around voice recognition. So when you're talking to a voice recognition system, if you're not relying on a push button scenario, the system needs to know if you finish talking before it moves on. So there's normally a second or just a little over a second gap where the system will think, okay, I think you finished talking, I'll process your message, and then it processes it straight away. But from a user perspective, you can go up to it and talk to it and feel like it's really natural.
Brilliant. So I think there's a question from Jamie on the chat then. So I'll read it out so you don't have to find it. So would the AI for the receptionist use a camera or an audio receiver to understand who the person is in front of them? You gave the example of they'll somehow spot whether it's a younger person or an older person. How's that done?
Yeah. So we use facial recognition system, and the facial recognition system is really advanced. It's one of the most advanced in the world, actually, and it actually allows us to determine people's age very accurately. It's the same facial recognition system that actually is used in digital identity checks, which are certified by the UK government DCMS identity framework. So that's how we determine the age and who's there. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm going to ask a question, and if do keep asking. Oh, hang on, no, I'm not going to ask them because I don't want to steal anyone else. We've got Matt who's just popped up. How does the AI deal with multiple people talking at once, or can it?
Yeah, so it can't. It's very difficult for the AI to listen to more than one person at any one time, like it's for any human being. And just like any other human being, it will just say, "Hold on there, can one at a time, please." Okay.
Okay. Is that a temporary limitation? I would imagine there must be people trying to solve that, because that would be a useful thing to be able to solve, particularly in those corporate use cases, I guess, where it might be a busy, crowded place.
The way the AI platform is being developed is an engagement tool, and so just like a human being, it's not going to allow 3 people to talk to it all at the same time, because it simply can't answer everybody at the same time. But there is some voice research separate to this that we're doing around sound, which allows us to pick up certain sounds and identify certain things when it's a very noisy environment, which is being used to enhance the experience for people in an environment where there is a lot of stuff going on. But in general sense, when the character's talking, it will engage with one person.
Yeah. I'm going to dive in with my question, because I've got one around that. So the open world game that you're creating, and use of NPCs within that, so an AI powered. Is there any learning that you can share around kind of how best to use that? Because I would imagine in an open world game where there are multiple story arcs, narratives, and things, and consequential actions, where if you did something even on the other world, it would have an impact. How do you manage that kind of game stuff with multiple AI-powered NPCs, and how things like how do they know what you've done? How can you feed that into the AIs? Or is it just about being really judicious or economical with your use of those AI characters because they're quite hard to manage in all of those game contexts?
Yeah, the thing is that you've got to be kind of careful how you carve out the data, because just because you might do something in one part of the world doesn't necessarily mean the character you're talking into another part actually knows what it is you've done.
Yeah.
But likewise, there could be a scenario where they do, and you want them to be able to have those sort of conversations. So we break things down into what we call domain-specific scenarios, and within those domain-specific scenarios, each NPC will have its own domain with which it can work with. And so, just like you do in any other game, when you're actually building your dialogue logic across your different NPCs, there will be triggers that will allow them to know about information or not. But when they come to have the conversation, that conversation will be really tied to the domain that they work within. So, for example, we can set the characters up to know a little bit about football, but it's pointless talking about football in 100 years from now in the context of football today, because it wouldn't be the same. So it's down to us to make sure that the data model represents football in a slightly different way if that's a subject we want to talk about. But another character might not know anything about football, and you ask them about football, and the character will say, actually, I don't know nothing about football, but I'll talk to you about cricket. I love cricket. You see what I mean? So you're kind of breaking up the story into lots of different ways and giving these characters their own things that they're interested in. We actually did it with the security guard. So you may have noticed he had a slight American accent going on there, right? And in one of the videos, I could go ask him, where are you from? And he said, oh, I'm from America. He goes, oh, is that why you've got an American accent? Yeah, I have. He goes, oh, good. He goes, can you tell me something about football? And he's like, I'm not interested in football, but I'll talk to you about NASCAR. I like NASCAR. Do you see what I mean? So we can control where that conversation will ultimately go, but that has no context to the game, right? Because the game's got its own story. So you've got to try to constrain the character to be within the context of the game, but talk about these other things in a way that fits, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Amazing. Well, I think we're just probably at time now. So, and there's no questions waiting, so I don't think I've missed anyone out. So I think it just remains for me to say, Asa and Andy, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your project with us. Good luck, I guess, good luck with the game, because obviously that's still development, and good luck with the 1956 individuals as well. Brilliant. And yeah, thank you so much. And so, yeah, a full thanks for everyone that's presented today, Freya, Maggie, David, Ruth, Andy, and Asa. Thank you very much. I would normally do like some parish notices at the end, but I don't actually have any this month. But that doesn't mean XR Network Plus isn't doing anything. So do, if you're not already signed up to our mailing list, if you go on the XR Network Plus website, which is just Google XR Network Plus, you'll see it. And it should pop up with a mailing list link, and you can join us that way and yeah, follow what we're doing. But yeah, thank you very much. We're going to end the seminar now. Bye.